All right, get ready. We've got a ton of info about Jim Rogers. He sent us the legendary investor, and we're going deep into his 2023 interview.
Oh, yeah, he's got some pretty strict opinions.
He does. He really lays out what he sees coming for the U.S. stock market and the global economy, and you want to understand his take on a potential market crash. So,
Like, what's his reasoning?
exactly. Let's break it all down and see what we can all learn. Rogers is pretty upfront about this bull market we've been in.
He's calling it the longest one ever in U.S. history.
That's a long time.
It has been going up since 2008.
Wow, so that historical context, I guess.
That's crucial to understanding his concerns.
Yeah, he's not just talking the talk either, right? He's putting his money where his mouth is. Rogers says he's not touching any UF shares right now.
Really?
Yeah, he's just waiting it out.
What's he waiting for?
For signs of what he calls madness before he even thinks about shorting the market.
That's interesting. So this madness is that, like, market euphoria?
Exactly. He's basically saying everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid thinking the market can only go up good times forever.
The good times can't last forever, can they?
Well, he doesn't seem to think so. He even talks about his own kids, talking about how easy it is to make money in the stock market now.
Oh, wow. So even the kids are talking stocks.
It seems like it, but I mean, is that a real indicator or just, what kids happen to be talking about?
Right, like kids talk about all sorts of things. I
Yeah.
don't think we can time the market based on, dinner table conversations. But it does show you how strong this optimistic feeling is. And if you look back in history, these super optimistic times, they've often come right before.
Like a crash?
Yeah, major market corrections. It's kind of like a bubble that's just waiting to pop.
So this madness is everyone thinking the market can only go up and they all jump on the bandwagon.
Exactly. And he sees this happening not just in the U.S. either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's global. He points to all these Korean investors just pouring money into U.S. stocks.
How much are we talking?
Back in December of 2022, it was averaging like $1 billion a day.
$1 billion a day. What is driving all that investment?
It's all tied to this thing called global liquidity. Basically, there's just a ton of money floating around right now.
Okay.
So imagine it's like water flowing through pipes.
Okay.
If there's a lot of water, the pressure builds up, right? So in the same way, when there's more money out there, asset prices get inflated, even if they're not really worth that much.
I see.
That's a big part of why Rogers is being so careful.
So where is he putting his money then? It doesn't sound like the typical investor.
Oh, no, he's got a pretty unique approach. He's actually holding a lot of U.S. dollars.
Really?
Yeah, he knows the dollar has its problems, but he thinks it'll be a safe haven when things get rough.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but history shows that when things are uncertain, investors run to the dollar even if it's not the best currency out there.
Interesting. So he's betting on the dollar's perceived safety. What else is he holding?
He's got some Chinese and Uzbekistanian shares, and he's more into silver than gold right now. He thinks gold's overpriced, so he's suggesting silver and other commodities that are undervalued might be better buys.
So he's looking for those hidden gems, basically.
Yeah, he's definitely a contrarian investor, always looking for what everyone else is missing.
He's marching to his own beat, for sure. And of course, there's his longtime bullishness on China.
Oh, right. He's been a China bull for ages.
He's drawing on decades of understanding their history and their economic cycles. He seems pretty convinced about their long-term potential.
He speaks a lot of parallels between China's growth and what the U.S. went through, both showing that they can bounce back and grow over time.
That's a pretty powerful comparison. So on one hand, we've got Rogers flashing a yellow light for the U.S. market, and on the other, he's giving China the green light.
He's playing the long game, for sure.
Not just looking at what's happening right now, but those long-term trends and the underlying forces driving the economy.
You got it. He's not chasing quick wins. He's looking for investments that align with where he thinks the world is headed.
I like that. And that brings us to his prediction about Korea, which is...
That's a fascinating one.
He thinks the whole division of the Korean peninsula is illogical and a waste of resources. He believes a reunification is going to happen and that a unified Korea could be a real powerhouse on the world stage.
It's a bold prediction for sure.
He even talks about opening the border with a massive celebration, like a giant party at the 38th parallel.
Wow, now that would be something.
Can you imagine? K-pop stars the works.
It sounds amazing. I love his optimism, but what about all the challenges? I mean, merging two totally different economic systems, North Korea and South Korea are worlds apart right now.
It's not just erasing a line on a map, that's for sure. We'll have to dive into those complexities of Korean reunification and what it could mean for the economy in the next part.
Definitely a lot to unpack there. Stick with us.
You were saying something about Rogers' view on Korea. Right. It's fascinating how he sees this divided peninsula. It just doesn't make sense to him logically or in terms of resources.
Yeah, he's convinced that a unified Korea is bound to happen.
He really thinks it's not a matter of if but when.
And that it could become a major economic player.
Exactly. He even talks about like a grand opening of the border.
Oh yeah, like a huge party.
A massive celebration at the 38th parallel.
With K-pop stars and everything.
Yeah. It's a pretty bold vision.
incredibly optimistic, but you have to think about the challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Merging two completely different systems like that.
Their economies, their politics.
North Korea and South Korea are operating on completely different levels right now.
It's not a simple task to bring them together.
It's not like you can just erase a border and everything's fine.
You've got to think about integrating two whole societies with different economic models, different levels of development, even cultural differences.
It makes me think of Germany after the Berlin Wall came down.
Absolutely. German reunification is a great comparison.
It's considered a success story now, but
It wasn't easy. It took years of huge investments and social changes for the former East Germany to catch up.
and there were a lot of people who thought it would be a disaster.
Even Rogers talks about the naysayers back then.
It makes you wonder what the investment implications would be for a unified Korea.
Would it be a boom, or would the cost be too high?
What sectors would benefit the most?
It's a complex question, for sure. There would probably be opportunities in infrastructure.
Like rebuilding roads and railways, things like that.
Exactly. Energy grids manufacturing and consumer goods could see a surge too as the North Korean market opens up.
But then there's the cost of modernizing North Korea.
Bringing their workforce into a market economy, that could be a huge drain on South Korea's resources.
It would put a strain on everything: social systems, education, healthcare. It's a massive undertaking.
Definitely something to consider, carefully weighing those potential rewards against the risks.
It's interesting how Rogers, with his contrarian approach, might see opportunity in Korea because others are hesitant.
He's drawn to those overlooked markets.
The ones that seem too risky for most.
Remember, he's not a fan of gold at the current price. He thinks silver and other undervalued commodities are better bets,
He's always looking for what others have missed.
like a detective searching for clues.
He even mentioned writing a book in Japanese about the world in 2030.
Oh, that's right. And he actually gives Korea a less than positive outlook in that book.
Really? That seems to contradict his optimism about reunification.
It does a bit. Maybe he sees some short-term challenges that could hold Korea back in the coming years.
I wonder what specific factors he's considering.
It could be the complexities of integrating two very different systems,
The potential for social and political clashes.
two cultures with different values and experiences coming together. It could be a rocky transition, even with the best intentions.
It's not just about numbers and economics. It's about people adapting to a whole new reality.
Something that's hard to capture in forecasts and spreadsheets,
And Rogers always emphasizes thinking for yourself.
not just following the crowd.
So his views on Korea, even with the seeming contradictions,
They make us think critically about the situation, consider different perspectives.
and come to our own conclusions.
He's giving us a framework for thinking, not a set of rules to follow.
So we've got this picture of Rogers cautiously optimistic about Korea's long-term potential.
But acknowledging there could be bumps in the road,
His approach highlights the need for thorough analysis
a long-term perspective.
and a willingness to accept that there's always uncertainty,
It's not about always being right.
but about making the best decisions you can with the information you have.
Which brings us back to his advice for individual investors.
Focus on what you know,
Don't get swept up in the hype.
and be prepared to make mistakes. He even jokes about hoping to live long enough to make a lot more mistakes.
It's a good way to look at it. Mistakes are part of learning.
It takes the pressure off having to be right all the time.
It's about always learning and improving your approach as you go.
He's not offering a quick path to riches. He's emphasizing developing a solid investment philosophy
Based on research, historical perspective, and understanding how people behave,
and being humble enough to admit when you're wrong.
it's refreshing to see that he's not afraid to talk about his own missteps.
That willingness to learn and adapt is what makes him so interesting.
He's not just a successful investor, he's a thought leader.
Someone who makes you think differently about the world.
And it seems like he's really passionate about sharing his knowledge.
Encouraging people to think critically.
It's not just about making money for him,
It's about helping people understand how things work and make better decisions.
about their lives and their investments.
It makes you look at investing in a whole new light.
It's not just about picking stocks and watching the number.
It's about learning about history, economics, psychology.
It's a way to engage with the world on a deeper level.
And that brings us back to Rogers' contrarian investing style.
What does that actually mean in practice?
A contrarian investor goes against the flow,
They look for opportunities where the majority is wrong.
betting against the herd mentality.
When everyone's feeling bullish, Rogers is looking for reasons to be cautious and vice versa.
So he's not afraid to be the lone voice, even if it means disagreeing with the so-called expert.
Exactly. And he's often been right with his contrarian bets. But it's not about being different just to be different.
He's looking for specific signs and patterns.
He's a keen observer of market psychology.
Looking for signs of euphoria or panic.
Those emotions can really distort how the market values things.
He also studies historical patterns.
Looking for parallels to past market cycles.
Trying to get clues about where things might be headed.
It's a mix of data analysis, historical perspective, and understanding human behavior.
It's not a simple formula.
It's a sophisticated approach that requires a sharp eye for opportunities.
But it's not foolproof.
He's made his fair share of mistakes.
But even his mistakes are valuable.
They give us insight into how he makes decisions.
And the challenges of dealing with unpredictable markets. He's not afraid to learn from those mistakes.
Which is so important in a world where people often try to hide their failures.
It's that humility and his intellectual curiosity.
His global perspective.
It all makes him such a compelling figure.
He's not just an investor, he's a thought leader who encourages us to think differently.
This has been a really insightful journey exploring Roger's world.
What has resonated most with you from his insights?
For me, it's his emphasis on how everything is connected globally.
It's easy to get focused on what's happening right here.
But he reminds us that the world is a complex system.
Understanding those connections is so important for making good decisions.
Whether it's about investing or anything else.
He's always reminding us to look at the big picture.
Consider the long-term trends, the forces shaping the economy.
He's not just focused on what's happening next quarter, he's thinking decades ahead.
His historical perspective is so valuable, too.
He always points out that market cycles repeat themselves.
And understanding those patterns can help us deal with the ups and downs.
It's not about predicting the future perfectly, but about recognizing the themes that drive human behavior and the markets.
And he stresses being adaptable.
Willing to change your mind when you learn something new.
It's not about being right all the time.
It's about adjusting your strategy as the world changes.
Holding on to outdated beliefs or ignoring changing market conditions.
That can be a recipe for disaster for investors.
He wants us to be lifelong learners.
Always looking for new knowledge and questioning what we think we know.
That's a great lesson for everyone, not just investors.
He also gives that great advice about sticking with what you know.
Not blindly following what others are telling you.
You don't have to be an expert in everything to be successful.
Focusing on what you understand and are passionate about.
That can lead to better results than chasing the latest hot stock tip.
It's about knowing your strengths and your limits.
He empowers us to make our own decisions.
Do our own research.
And develop our own convictions.
So as we keep going with Rogers and his insights on Korea,
let's keep those key messages in mind.
Be curious, be critical, be adaptable.
And most importantly, think for yourself.
His story shows us that we can all be lifelong learners.
Always seeking new knowledge.
Challenging the status quo.
Embracing the unknown.
It's about being engaged with the world, asking questions, and never stopping learning. Now let's dive into that less than positive outlook he gave Korea in his book. It seems to contradict his general optimism, but maybe there's more to it. We were talking about that less than positive outlook Rogers had for Korea in his book about the world in 2030.
Yeah, it seemed a bit odd considering how much he believes in a unified Korea.
It does seem like a contradiction.
Maybe he just sees some big roadblocks along the way.
He's not just a dreamer, right? He's an investor.
And a very successful one. He's got to analyze the risks, too.
I guess he could be worried about how hard it would be to actually make the integration work.
Yeah, two systems, two cultures merging together.
There's bound to be some friction.
You got to consider the economic differences, too.
Oh yeah, North Korea's infrastructure is way behind South Korea's.
It would take billions, maybe even trillions to modernize it.
And then there's the challenge of bringing their workforce into a market economy.
Right, they're used to a very different system.
And what about the social and political aspects?
Even if everyone wants it to work?
Blending two cultures with different values and experiences.
It could create a lot of tension.
It's like what some European countries have gone through trying to integrate migrants.
People from different backgrounds with different expectations.
It hasn't always been easy.
The human side of things often gets forgotten in those economic predictions.
Reunification wouldn't just be about merging economies.
It would be about merging
ways of life.
It's bound to be bumpy.
It's like Rogers is saying, hey, don't get carried away with the excitement of reunification without thinking about the real challenges.
He's adding a dose of reality to the optimism.
Right. He's not naive about how complex it would be, but he still believes in Korea's potential in the long run.
Remember that idea he had about the big party at the 38th parallel?
Oh, yeah. With the K-pop stars and the fireworks.
It shows you how optimistic he is.
He believes in people coming together.
Overcoming huge obstacles.
He's not just looking at numbers.
He sees the human potential of a unified Korea.
He's playing the long game.
Thinking about a future where Korea has worked through those initial problems.
And has become a major force in the world.
It's a powerful reminder that change is always possible.
Even in situations that seem really stuck.
Maybe the journey is just as important as the destination.
The whole process of reunification, even with its challenges.
It could be transformative in itself.
It's like Rogers is saying, let's be realistic about the difficulties, but let's not lose sight of the bigger goal.
A future where Korea is one and thriving.
It's a message of hope and resilience.
And it goes back to his overall philosophy: think for yourself, challenge the way things are, and keep learning.
He wants us to be involved in shaping the future.
Not just sitting back and watching it happen.
It's been fascinating diving into Jim Rogers' world.
His insights on the market, the global economy, and Korea,
It really made us think.
and approach the future with a sense of informed optimism,
He reminds us that the world is full of opportunities.
but also challenges.
And success doesn't come from blindly following the crowd.
It comes from developing your own understanding, being open to new information, and having the courage to make your own decisions.
He's a true contrarian.
Not just in how he invests, but in how he thinks.
And that's a valuable lesson for all of us.
So next time you're facing a tough choice, remember what Jim Rogers says: think for yourself, challenge your assumptions, and never stop learning.
You might just find a hidden opportunity.
Or spark a positive change in the world.
That's it for this deep dive into Jim Rogers' fascinating world.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep diving deep.